All right, so we should have sound now. Thank you, Benny, for the quick message. Welcome to the July 29th, 2025 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo, and I am the host of the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can just simply ask questions in the live chat field, and or send questions in advance to clubcubase at steinberg.de. So when asking questions, realize that my ability to answer in real time may soon be eclipsed with the number of questions coming in. We will go through all the questions chronologically. If you could mention which version of Cubase you're running, whether it's LE, AI, Artist, Elements, or Pro, if it's version 12, 13, or 14, and the operating system, that information is often helpful. We should have an index of all the topics covered in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field several hours after the live stream ends. So you could look there, and if you want to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams with timestamps, you could go to cubaseindex.com. We also we want to give Jan from Stockholm thanks for creating the website. We also want to give two people, Jazzdude and Agent K, who serve as moderators, special thanks. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do it to make it a better community experience. And we'll give an extra round of thanks for Jazzdude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I'm the host of the live stream today. Today is the last live stream of the month, so we will be doing our Zoom meetup in about 1 hour and 55 minutes. I will go ahead and post the link for it, and I'll try to do that every half hour or so. So this is a great way to kind of meet people that are on the live stream. It's always fascinating discussions. I know we're going to have some discussions of AI functionality and other great topics that come up. So we look forward to seeing people there. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we see Stefan joining from Sweden. We have Jorge joining from Portugal. We see Jazzdude on. Always wonderful to see him. We have Benny, who I think just got back from Mallorca. And thanks for the message that my sound wasn't configured. Appreciate that. All right, we see Rob Schmedeke, says he asked me to send him the index document, the master index document, so we got that off to him. All right, and we see Anthony Clark. We see Recyclop checking in from Finland. All right, we see Rick France from the Pacific Northwest. All right, we see Fly V joining from Winnipeg. All right, we see Jan from Cubase Index giving kudos to Jazzdude for the wonderful unofficial Cubase Nation Discord. All right, we have Marvin Earl checking in from Newport, Rhode Island. All right, we see Bratman Studio joining from Whittier, California. We have VS Terra Nova joining from Amsterdam. Right. Right, Mickey Michaels just says Zoom Meet. So yeah, so if you haven't been involved with one, it's always just a great way to meet people that are on the live stream, and it's always wonderful discussions. All right, we see Rashab Saxena just says, "What's up? How you doing?" So doing well. We see Tony Trunzo from Australia just saying hi to Greg, myself, and to Cubase Nation. We see Martin joining from Germany. So we see from Joseph Slanda, it says, what would cause copied legato MIDI events to become staccato when pasted on the same track? Nothing kind of comes to mind, but let's go ahead and let me just come over. Let me switch projects here. Let's see if we can So if it's on the same track, let me just reread that. So what could cause a copy? I can see if it's on a different track and maybe that track is going through. So let's say if we have kind of a legato part here. All right, so let's come over. All right, so say we have, let me just check my audio interface now, make sure. Okay, so if we're on the same track, so let's say we have. All right, so depending, make sure that there's no, if it's like an orchestral part. So let's say if I look at this particular instrument, I come over and let's say if we're on kind of a legato patch for this particular sound. All right, let me take it off cycle. All right, so let's say that's legato, and if I copy it down, depending upon what type of instrument it is, so let's say I copy those particular sounds, but it's playing maybe a different key switch. So now when I play this, so let's say if we look at this and let's get to like a quick note expression. We'll go to our expression map. So I'll just come over here. Say, okay, we're going to use our cello. Let's look at the articulations here. All right, so let's say in this one, make sure that you don't have like a key switch. So let's say we are in legato mode here, but this, when we go to this event, we switch to spiccato. So now like the notes look identical in the event. So if we're just looking at the velocity, we can see, let me just have that playback. So we'll start legato here. So we could have a key switch here that would put this to, let me just make sure. Okay, to spiccato, and let's say if I let's just have this event start a little earlier. So as we listen to this, that, we could have these kind of just switched between different articulations. So that would be more kind of staccato. So make sure that you don't have any key switch notes in that could be switching, especially if it's like an orchestral instrument, that could be switching the length or the articulation of the particular notes. All right, so we have Mickey Michaels just checking in from London, England. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we have Sound Foundry Studios, says here on time for once, but got to log out for a vocal session. Have a good session. We see Gary, is it Harry or Harry? Just says hello from South Coast of England. Thanks for joining us. And John Barry is joining from South Devon. So Michael's just, I just see a question, MIDI echo. So let's say if we want to come over and we're playing a particular voice here. So if we want to put like there is a MIDI echo plugin. So if we come over here, let's say to our MIDI inserts, so we'll come over, let's see if I have this. Yeah, so that we can put an echo plugin on. So now when I play a single note, we could have it automatically kind of echo, and we could have the pitch changed, like do a pitch offset. So we can say, okay, I want this to go down chromatically. So now when I hit a single note, that all we had to do is, but if we want the pitch to stay the same, and you could assign kind of different echo beats. So if you wanted to be 16th note triplets, or let's say if you wanted to be more based on eighth notes. So now we could just kind of trigger one particular note, and so just by one chord, and we could have the echoes automatically kind of go down in velocity or go up in velocity. So if we want to echo now, so we get it for every echo repetition that there's an increase in the velocity. So let me know if that's what you want to see, Mickey. All right, so we have PRB Productions says, hi Greg, I'm Brian from the UK. How do I create guitar diagrams in Score Editor? I can't seem the option that makes the chord diagrams. I'm on Cubase 14 Pro, many thanks. So I don't think the current version can do the chord diagrams, but you know, you can if you needed to. So it just hasn't made it into the new scoring features. We can do guitar tablature, but if it's the chord diagrams, I don't think that those are implemented yet. We see more and more scoring functions implemented all the time, but currently the chord diagrams I don't believe are actually implemented in. All right, Maxim Kozacek asks, hello Greg, does Cubase 14 Pro have an audio to MIDI tool like Ableton Live? So if you could do it for monophonic sources. So if we wanted to come over here, let's say we have our vocal, we could go into our Very Audio editor. Let's edit the Very Audio, and we go to our functions. Here we could choose to extract MIDI. And as we do this, we can just have the MIDI automatically extracted directly, but it's intended for kind of single, like monophonic sources, not polyphonic. Okay. All right, so see Jan is not going to be able to make the Zoom social tonight, so we'll miss having you on. I always like seeing the map of the world in your background with Sweden in the center. All right. All right, we see Dallas LaRue checking in from Las Vegas. Channel Ripoff asks, hi Greg, I know this is an old question, but I forgot when and how to use the delay constraint compensation button. Thanks. So sometimes when we are tracking, we may have plugins, especially if we're kind of recording as we're building a mix. And sometimes, you know, we could think of like the plugin tax is often going to be latency. So some plugins may have a lot of latency on a particular system. So as we go to work on particular systems, when we go to record audio, that audio may be delayed because it's being processed through the plugins in real time. So what the constrained delay compensation will do is if we have a particular plugin, so let's say on this particular track, we go to our inserts and we have something like a vocal chain. All right, so we could see here that we have we could actually see there's a latency monitor. So if you go to the setup sections, you could activate the latency monitor. And if we have multiple plugins that are causing latency in our system, so let's say we open up reverb and we're tracking through like a convolution reverb, that we come over here, we can see that these plugins here, we have 247 milliseconds of latency. So we can see that reverence is 11.3 milliseconds, vocal chain is 236.3 milliseconds. So if we were to record this, we would hear that latency almost like a slapback echo while we're recording. So what we could do is when we activate the constrained delay compensation, that could bypass plugins that have higher latency so that we don't have to go through our project and do it across multiple tracks at once. So the constrained delay compensation, like if you're recording and you hear a weird delay, turn it on. If you are editing and you're like, oh, I can't edit this plugin for some reason, that's because it's being disabled for the delay compensation, then disable the constrained delay compensation, and then you could edit the plugin settings. So it's just a fast way to say I have plugins that are scattered throughout my project that I want to disable for latency compensation. Then I could just hit that one single button and those plugins will be bypassed temporarily for recording and tracking purposes. All right, so we have Music Miss says, I'm an FL Studio user, but this was live, so I joined. I'm from India. Thanks for joining us today. We hope that we're happy to see you on the Steinberg live stream to Club Cubase. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. We're just here to help people get up to speed and use their Cubase better. All right, so we see from Supra, it says, is there another way to break out, separate that little UI element in the editor beneath MIDI notes for articulation or velocity, etc.? It feels very small, especially when messing with vertical bars, velocity, etc. So, once you have, your particular notes here, so, there's a lot of stuff that we could do just in the particular, so if we're looking at our velocities here, I would say if you're doing a lot of detailed controller editing, you see this little arrow that points upward to the right. Click there, and then you could actually have you could have multiple controller lanes open. So if you just kind of click on the plus sign, you can say, oh, I want to see my articulations and my velocity, and let's say my modulation wheel and CC7. And we could actually store these as presets. So if I just wanted to come over here, we could say, okay, let's come and say, all right, as we do this, we'll say, we'll call this preset Supra. All right, so now if I just come over here to like a velocity only setting, so let's just say so if we close, let's see, I think we could actually have all right, so let's say if I close these particular windows, we could remove the lanes here. And now when we want to just come over here, we could just say, oh, let's pull up our particular, our favorite velocities, and you could recall those from various keyboard shortcuts as well. And if we take this down to the lower zone, we may not have enough vertical space effectively to edit. So we'll see our little menu that kind of points down like to the lower zone. So now when we do this, you may be able to just kind of come over here, and as we make this taller, that we could see more of the different presets. And as we kind of change the vertical height here, we'll see some of those will get tucked away. as we do this automatically, and as we bring it back, you can just kind of adjust your height. And each of the controller lanes are also freely adjustable as well. So if you want to see this, but a lot of times, you know, this may be for kind of quick MIDI editing, but kind of detailed editing, most people, you know, film composers will do kind of full screen, and often their, you know, primary screen, like the biggest screen, is going to be the dedicated to the MIDI key editor. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right. All right, so we have Joe checking in from Rochester. Great to see you on. Says, is there a way to separate lead vocals from background vocals with SpectraLayers 12? Thank you, and I hope all is well. Yeah, I hope you're doing great too. Let me see if I have a file that I could play that has kind of background vocals in it. That's kind of legal for me to play on YouTube. Let me see if I could just open up a project and create just a quick one with some background files in it. All right, so let me just take this section and I'll just do a quick export audio mix down. All right, so let me see if all right, so let's say we have this. Let's go to SpectraLayers here. All right, so I think if we go to the modules, there's like an unmix voice. Let me see. Unmix multiple voices. I think that might be for maybe more like interviews, but I thought that there was one. Let me just. Let's try it. I think that this might be more for, but we'll give this a try. Yeah, so I think the vocals are still going to be kind of spread out, you know, included. Yeah, so I thought that there was kind of, and maybe it was part of Nuendo. Yeah, so I think like unmixed voices would take like an interview with two people on the same audio file and be able to kind of unmix those. But let's just see. Come here. Just unmix this quickly. All right, so we come here. Let's just look at, let's say.
Their heart. Somebody wants to take you just.
But yeah, I don't think that there's a way for the background vocals. Now let me see if I run just on this particular layer. Let's see if we do unmix multiple voices. Yeah, I think that this is more for kind of interview segments where they're perhaps overlapping. I don't think it's intended for background vocals. Yeah, don't see that. So sorry about that, Joe. Hope you're well. Great to see you on the live stream. All right, so we see from Music Miss says nice orchestral instrument and delay. So yeah, use MIDI effects on orchestral stuff and filters on orchestral stuff as well. You get great results. So all right, I'm gonna paste the live stream, the Zoom meetup link. So we'll be starting about an hour and a half. Okay. All right. So we see the artist knows love checking in. Says, hope everyone's doing great. Thank you for all you do, Greg. I've hit the like button. So it's good advice to hit the like button. All right. We see from Channel Ripoff. Says, gee, most of the time I just render when I'm finished with my MIDI. Sometimes I make a group track and route through that into a brand new audio track and just record the part. Is that a waste of time? So I would say if you know that you're going to have that particular plugin, you know, it's, you know, you probably don't have to generate the wave files for it. I would say that, you know, if you like, let's say you're at someone's studio and all of a sudden they were just like, okay, we're doing this, and, you know, maybe they have a plugin that you're not using and you did you took your project over there. They have a plugin that you don't have. So you know that when you take it back to your studio where you don't have that plugin, at that point you would go, oh, okay, we could just, it's not going to sound the same. So at that point you could render the files. One of the things that you could also do with your virtual instrument tracks. So let's say if I just want to come here and we'll take just like this Rhodes patch here, or the bass. If we have instrument tracks, so let's say we add an instrument track, and I want it to be pad shop, when you don't have to route to groups anymore. So I think since 12 or 13, when we add an audio track, we could just come over here and say our input is coming from our track instrument. So we can say, oh, I want to send my input from a pad shop directly without having to go through a group. Older versions, you'd have to go through a group. Now we could just send the audio out. We could set the audio output of an instrument as the input for an audio track. So if you are going to different collaborative environments where people may not have that particular plugin, then I think rendering can make sense. But if you're just kind of doing everything within your own ecosystem where you're not really sharing and depending on other people's computers or interfacing to make sure that your tracks play back, then I don't think it's necessary unless you're running out of audio performance. All right. So we see Michael says he was going to try to be back for the Zoom meeting a little bit later. Yeah, it'd be great to see fresh faces on. Tony Trunzo asks, Greg, is it possible to import a MIDI file and have Halion 7 load rather than Halion Sonic? Thanks. So there's no default way. So when you go to your preferences or settings and we come over to, we say, okay, on our import MIDI file, so we say, okay, we go to our MIDI file here. We could choose for it to automatically load into Halion Sonic 7. You can have it just load instrument tracks. If you have it automatically load, let's see, if we have it automatically load into, you might be able to do a two-step process where, let's say, if we have, let's just add a Halion Sonic. And because we may be able to save a multi preset and see if that will load up. So let's come over here. Okay. Okay, so now when we come over here, let's save a multi preset. So we'll call this July 25th or 29th, 2025. Okay, so let's see if we come over here to user presets, let's say VST. Let me just load up an instance of Halion. But realize that the Halion, Sonic and Halion 7 will sound the same. So let me just open this up. And let's see if we Alright, so it's not, there's a general MIDI multi that you could load up. So let's see if I come over here to my VST instrument presets, and we didn't save it as track presets. Let me just. Yeah, I don't think that there's, just take, let's see if we drag it from the big media bay over. All right, so here's our July 29th. So let's see what happens if we drag this over. Yeah, it's just going to load into kind of Hallian Sonic. So I don't think that there's a direct way to do it automatically, but you know, there's not going to be any real sonic difference between Hallian Sonic and Hallian. It's the same engine basically. All right, so we see Jack Bowers is saying hello from New York City. We have Parabot 2, who I believe is in Australia as well, saying hi to everyone. All right, Al Recco just says, hi, is there a way to set it up so when I press space it stops and starts from the same place it stops? When I double tap at space it starts from a set start position. So if we come over here to your transport, we could go to there's different start modes. So we could just say, okay, return to start position on stop. So when we play here, it will go back to our start position. And I think if we come over here, so let's say if we play, and then if I have the numeric keypad, so it doesn't immediately kind of jump to another location. So it's not when you double tap it starts from a set, but I think if we are coming here, so we could have it automatically go to the start position. So we just go to transport, start mode. So let's say if we turn this off, and now with that off, when I hit stop, and if I use kind of the space bar here, so let's say I hit space bar, but if I hit the 0 key on a numeric keypad, I can just stop, and then if I hit the numeric 0, so you know if you hit the 0, so I'm hitting enter on the keypad to play, and then if I hit the 0 key, it stops in place, and if I hit it again, it goes back, but it doesn't necessarily jump to a different space. All right, so we see, is it possible to create a macro that will attach all my bus channels to the right? Let me see if we could, if the setting zones is addressable in a key command. I'm not sure if we could do it in the key command, but we could select. Yeah, I know we could, you know, like this, let's say if we have our group channels, I'll just add a couple of group channels here. So I think that we could select all of these. If I hold down Shift key, that would help. And then when we go to all right, let me look for right edge, the key commands. Yeah, so, I don't think that there's a key command, so I don't think we could do it, but if we, select our group tracks here. So, sorry, just keep holding down the wrong modifier key. We can, if they're all selected, kind of do them all at one time, but I don't think there's a keyboard shortcut to switch it between like the left, right, or center zones. So you could select all the group channels with the Project Logical editor, and then go to the visibility tab, and at that point just move them all at once, but not a way to kind of automate the entire process in a macro that I know of. Okay, we have Mark Winslow sending aloha from Hawaii. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see Jack Bauer just says it's the 50% upgrade sale coming next month. So, as soon as there are promotions that are available, they're obviously announced, but we generally don't announce promotions in advance. So it can't really indicate. Okay, so we see from Real Raven 2000 says, I made a trap beat using Drum Machine. Is there any way to trigger two different samples, triggered them with the same pad, but route it to different outputs so we can use one for, I guess, maybe sidechain duties? All right, so let's take a quick look. I don't know of a way to kind of have it automatically, so you might have to put it onto a different pad and maybe copy. So let's come over here. Okay, so let's say we have all right, so let's say we have kind of a basic pattern here. We'll go to our pad. So if we wanted to, let's see if, I don't think we can copy the particular, I think if you wanted to do that, you might have to, let's just say we want to take our snare here and copy it. So I could just come over here. And let's say if we wanted a different sound, because you could drop. So if we, and I don't think that there's a way to kind of copy the individual lane. Let me just, yeah. So you might have to duplicate that and then send, that particular, let's say we want to take our hand clap. And when we go over here, we can say, okay, let's get to our group and then send the clap out to a different output that could feed the side chain if you need to. So I don't think that there's a way to kind of, the actual sound is going to be like one pad is going to be routed to one stereo out. So if we just take a different pad and you can load up a different sample And at that point, that output, once we go to like the pattern editor, we could just kind of copy the same exact pads and use this as a sidechain source, and that for playing the different sounds. So I think you would have to actually duplicate, which should be pretty easy to do. Sorry about that. All right, wonderful to see Michael Pierce on from Grand Chapel Studios in England. All right, we have Roland Stuff joining from Sussex and the south coast of England. Yeah, so you see from Real Raven, it says long kick for the mix. Sorry, much to duck compressor, both happening at the same time without copying the kick lanes and all drum machine patterns. So, yeah, I mean, if we take this pattern, so let's say if we drag this pattern here, and then, convert it to MIDI. So say we come over here, we convert that to MIDI. Then we could, just in the logical editor, take this and, we could do something like select all F-sharp ones. So say we want to take, we'll say subtype is going to be equal to so if it's a complex pattern, so we could say, so we want to select all the F-sharp ones. All right, so just make sure that that condition is set here. Okay, and we want to, let's say we're going to transform, and we want to take the subtype, and let's add 1. So you could just come over here, copy that and, take and have the notes automatically kind of triggered if it's too hard to actually do, but you may have to convert it into MIDI track first, a MIDI event. Okay. All right, so we see Music Mist says, does Cubase support microtonal setups? We also need to make music innovation through 31 EDO. AI can't copy that yet. So yeah, the instruments will kind of play back. They're not limited to MIDI. So with the VST 3.5 instruments, you could do, all sorts of microtonal scales, and you could also, Cubase is set up to, so if you go to your settings here, for full MIDI 2.0 support. So if you wanted to, come over and see all of your resolutions, so, Cubase has been supporting MIDI 2 since version 12. We're just kind of waiting for a lot of instruments, but you could do microtonal stuff as well. All right, so see channel ripoff says, Greg, adding to the channel selection on the left, what is the use of direct routing? I can route fine without it. So let's say, we had your track here set up, and we had, 8 sends going on. So let's say, okay, we have a very dense mix going on. So let's say we have, revelation, we have, a couple delays. But let's say all of our sends are completely used with effects, but I still need to do parallel processing. And many times we would use parallel processing from sends. But now you could just come over and see direct routing. So if we have multiple groups, so if we kind of just come over here, we could have our direct routing and say, okay, let's add a couple more groups. Okay, so if I was doing lots of parallel processing, I could say, okay, I want this going out of my stereo bus. I want it to also go out of group 1. I need it to go out of, group, another group here. So say group 2 and to group 3. All right, so we'll just come over here. So this will allow me to route to multiple destinations, and we could choose to have these summed or not. So if we come here to the settings, we could say direct routing, it will say summing mode on. So now we could send this one channel to multiple groups simultaneously. So it just gives you, why you might use a send versus direct routing is if we were needed to have varying levels, but sometimes we may want to send everything to an alternate output. So let's say we have our mix going on, and sometimes, I remember working with Phil Ramone, and he was always notorious for always having a tape recorder going on during the session. So in this kind of scenario, you could just say, okay, I want all my tracks to always be going out of my tape out bus. So it's always recording regardless of what's happening in the session. So I just have kind of an alternate bus. So you could send varying levels to different destinations with sends, or if you just need a static level where you don't need to adjust the balance between wet and dry. If you're utilizing something like a hearback headphone system, here you could just take your 8 outputs and have every track being routed to 8 groups that are being sent out to different outputs for headphone monitoring without having to utilize any of those for different effect processing. So it just gives you kind of more possibilities for routing. All right, so we see from Real Raven 2000 said it would be real nice if we could trigger the long kick for the mic while triggering a short impulse for a sidechain in the drum machine. Kicks with sustain are not great for this. The only other way would be to send to a drum replacer, or maybe there's a gate that auto closes immediately if signal is above threshold. So you could, obviously use a gate, but if you want it to, take a scenario, something else that, if you wanted to do something like that for drums, and if you have like a real drum recording, is just to come over here and say, okay, we're going to go to our hit points. So let's say we want to just come over here and let's set our threshold and our intensity. And if we just come over here, we could just say, let's create MIDI notes. And then this is automatically just made MIDI notes on a track. And if you want it to take all of these MIDI notes to like a fixed length, we could come over here. Let's just do, I could select all of these notes and let's set our length, to something very small. So now we could have MIDI notes that are only, lasting, 7 clock pulses. And if we wanted to look at that, and let's exchange our time formats here. So if we were to look at our particular MIDI notes here, so we could just come over here and just have this particular MIDI note that's firing off something, and that could last, we could last it down to 1 millisecond if you wanted to utilize that for triggers. So if you're using, like, if you have drums as audio, you could use hit points to extract it into MIDI and use that as well. All right. I'm going to post the link for the Zoom social. Now, again, that'll be in about an hour from now. All right, so we see from all and stuff. Hi, Greg. Is there a shortcut to quickly shift from selector arrow to scissors when editing? I do this a lot, and going up to the toolbar each time slows things down. Well, for me anyway. Thanks. Yeah, so all you have to do is, you'll love this feature, just, so we have our object selection tool. Hold down the Alt or Option key, and then it will turn and allow you to cut, just like that. So Alt or Option, and then just click, and the selection tool will immediately allow you to split event. So, all right, wonderful to see Lawrence Koch checking in from Rhode Island. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're well. And we see Soren from Sweden. Okay, so we see Channel Ripoff says, okay, got it. Thanks. Michael Pierce says, hey, Greg, perhaps not today, but it would be possible to get a comparison between unmixed noisy speech in SpectraLayers 11 versus SpectraLayers 12, pondering an upgrade for a project. So I would have to reinstall 11 on my system, but I could have something prepared for Friday's live stream if you want. So, and if you have an example of noisy speech that you want me to use it on, I'd be happy to utilize that. All right, so we see Alreco says, that works, thank you. All right, great to see Uno Memento from Finland on. He said, long day at work today. So got a lot going on, and will you be here occasionally? All right, glad you could pop in. All right, Sonic Lab asks, hi Greg, I get noticeable latency even at 128 buffer when I record vocals or guitar, DI with effects or the track channel. How can you set this up in Cubase at 0 latency? So there's never going to be like true 0 latency if we want to use effects, but if you hit the if you hit the constrained delay compensation, so if you go to the lower left-hand corner right here, this icon, this will bypass the effects while you're recording. So any kind of latent effects that will go through and bypass those particular plugins while you're recording, and then you could just simply pop it off after you're done recording. So give that a try. All right, Robert Verbeek says, "Hi Greg, I recently made a project in the Hub Songwriter in production, but now my FaderPort 8 doesn't work. In all other empty start projects, it always works. Is there something I miss in Cubase 14 Pro?" All right, so let's say we do a new project and we go to, let's say, recording, and let's see if it's production. So let's say we go to our songwriter. All right, so say if we start playing, all right, so say we have our electric piano. So generally it's kind of, so never. All right. So it says, but now my FaderPort doesn't work, and all other empty start projects it always works. Is there something I miss in Cubase 14 Pro? So one, just make sure that when you do this, make sure that, so I'm not sure if you're running your FaderPort as a MIDI remote or if it's being run as a Mackie control, but, try going to your studio setup if it's, could be running as a Mackie control, and make sure that there's nothing that is turning this on or off. So let's say I'm going to just pop over here. I just loaded the template up. I'll go to my Korg Nano control, and now as everything is kind of functioning here as expected. So my transport, when I go to, let's say if we switch to mixer, so let's say if I come over here, now we can just kind of come over and so it's not really affecting my control surface at all. Make sure that there wasn't any change in your studio setup, where you might have the PreSonus connected to, but it seems, I don't think that loading a different project shouldn't have any impact on it. All right, so we see Jagurtha Studio says, hello, in Pro Tools, when you select an audio clip using the selector tool and press the Q key, it deletes everything to the left of the selection. When you press the S key, it deletes everything to the right. Is it possible to do the same thing in Cubase? All right, so let's say, just jump back to a different project here. So I think we could do afterwards. So let's say if I'm here and I use my let's see if I use my Alt key, I could my Option key with the scissors tool. I could delete everything after. Let me just see if there's a preference to do that. Yeah, so we could let me just check again. So we could just come over and delete afterwards by default. So let's say if I come here, don't do that, but hold down the command or I'm sorry, the Option or Alt key with the eraser tool that will erase afterwards. If you wanted to erase events before, we could probably make a quick macro. And so let me see if we could do a quick macro for that. Or maybe a project logical editor. You might be able to do it. Then you could assign it to different keyboard shortcuts if you want. So let's see if we do project logical editor. All right, so let's say we want to. So we'll take from the selected event here, we're going to say we want to select, media type is, let's see if we could do it this way real quick. Let's say our container type is equal to track. We'll say that the property is selected. Let's see if we just maybe do event. And the position is before the cursor. Sorry, let me remove those. All right, so I have this selected here. And all right, and then we could just say delete. Okay, we'll save this as a preset. So now if we wanted to all right, so now if I'm here, I'm going to select that particular event and we will run this project logical editor. And now everything is deleted before that event. And if we wanted to delete everything after the cursor, we'll say beyond cursor. So we'll say let's see if I'm here. And if I want it to be post, so we'll save this as a preset. All right, so now if I'm here, I can take this, let's say our cursor's here. All right, let me just All right, so now if I just come here, we're going to locate from the selection end. So I have that event selected. Now everything so we could save that as a preset, and then we could trigger different and once we go to your key commands, you could just come over here to the process project logical editor functions. So, and then you could assign keyboard shortcuts directly. So we'll say delete events, beyond song cursor, delete events before. So you could assign your own keyboard shortcuts for that. So again, this is what you could do. So you want to, if it's at the end, you want to choose transport, locate, selection end. We're doing event. We're going to do position is beyond the cursor and delete for the post process. And then for the previous one, we would just do this and say before cursor. And then so you could create those same conditions exactly in Cubase if you need to. Okay. All right, Alpha G Pogo. If my input channel and the track that is routed to are both at 0 fader and no pregain, etc., why wouldn't their meters show the same thing? All right, so let's just do a brand new project here. Okay. Let me just do an empty project. Sorry about that. All right, so let's say we're going to come over here. We're going to add a stereo track. All right, so let's add stereo track. Okay, and we're going to go to our mix console here. We will see our input channels. Let's see, I'm going to make a stereo input. So go to my audio connections, add a stereo input. Okay, let's come over here. I'll just knock the control room down. So I'm just going to put an oscillator, like a test tone generator, on it. Okay, so right now we see, and if we go to the test tone generator, let's just put this at -6. Okay, so we have -6 dB there, and let's go ahead and just make this taller so you can see it a little better. All right, and we will come over, let's just make this input. From our stereo input. So we can see that they're going to be exactly the same here. So make sure that your input channel doesn't have any particular, any other gain on it. But looking at it right here, so we see our input channel is going directly with the oscillator that's at -6. And we can see that the value here is -6, -6, -6. They're all set to 0 dB. It could also, depending on your source, if you, make sure that you don't have any, compression, on the particular channel as well. I mean, that could affect gain. Make sure there's no plugins on the particular channel. Also, make sure that your audio interface isn't adding or taking gain away. But as you can see here, just putting the test tone oscillator at -6. We have that channel, the input channel at 0, the mixer channel at 0, the output channel at 0. And we look, we have -6, -6, -6 all the way through. So try putting an oscillator and see if you get the same results that you're running into, but it looks like it's working as expected for me. All right, so just rereading this one more time. So my input channel and the track that it's routed to are both at 0 fader and no pre-gain, so why wouldn't the meters show the same thing? Yeah, so it looks like, let me know if I did anything differently than you did. Okay, for Meridian Audio Studio asks, hi, in Tracks View, where do I insert bars? Okay, so let's take a look. All right, so let's say we have kind of our track view here, and we want to insert like kind of common time here. So I'm going to hold down, I'm going to grab my range tool. And I think if we just hold down the control or command key, or here, let me just hide the lower zone here real quick. So let's say, I just take I select my range. So I use the range tool to select the range, and then we go to edit menu to range, and we see insert silence, and then all those other tracks will just kind of get bumped over to the right. So once you have the range, and use the range tool to set your in and out points, go to your edit to range to insert silence. So let me know if that works for you. All right, wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas, joining the live stream. Artist knows love. Wants everyone to hit the like button and he's giving a shout out to Jazz Dude. All right, well deserved. Okay, reading through comments. All right, Anders McCormack asks, hi Greg, if I have Cubase 11 and want to build a new PC, what's the most effective way to have it running on both systems? Could I use 11 on both, or can I buy the latest version and sync them? Thanks. So you could still, as long as your key is authorized. So if you have Cubase 11 on your USB-E licenser, you can just simply move the USB key between the two computers. If you have Cubase 14, which is the latest version, Cubase 14 allows you to run the license with on an account-based system, so that you can run your Cubase license on up to 3 different computers. So you don't have to do anything or move a key or anything like that. Basically, it's like logging in with a Gmail account, similar to that. But for, with utilizing the Steinberg licensing. All right. All right, Mark Winslow just asks, hi, is there a quick way to edit out when the speaker has a cough or persistent sniffles during a recording? Currently, I have to edit each one of those out individually. Sometimes, people use noise gates for stuff like that, for sniffles kind of in between. One of the things that you could do is, make a quick macro, and this process has gotten easier because I made a complex macro, and I think Steinberg saw it, may have said, oh, we could make that a little easier for people. So let's come over here to our key commands. So what I want to do basically is, like, if there's a cough or something like that, is I want to select the particular region and just kind of bring the gain down here. So let's go ahead and create a quick macro, and we'll call it a deep breath. Okay, so we're going to take the range, and let's see if we can so I think we want to first kind of split the particular range. And then we could say decrement event volume. All right, I think I need maybe to switch tools. Let's just go to the select tool. Okay, so I'm going to add that, and let's now decrement event volume, and we'll do this like multiple times. So I'm just going to add this like maybe 12 times. All right, let me just add this one, the first command. We're going to split the particular range. So we're going to split the range first, switch to the object selection tool, and then decrement the event volume. And then maybe we will switch back to the range tool. So now anytime if we needed to like de-breath or de-cough, I could just come right over here and let's say run the macro, and you could just significantly minimize it. Just so you want to take that section there, boom. Just so if you want to take like the bass part, we'll make this a little better amplitude signal, more obvious visually to see. If I don't do that, all right, so now, sorry. So you could do stuff like that, can help a lot, and you could, so just kind of select a range. You could also, if there's, and that's good for breaths because you don't necessarily want to take breaths away. You could also just come over there, select the range, and just delete. So, so some of those are some techniques that you could try, Mark. All right, so Ross asks, hi Greg, can you please explain the benefits of using the control room? All right, so the control room is a separate monitoring path. So the control room, just like what we would see on traditional large analog format consoles, is the control room is going to, not just take the master fader of the mix. There's a lot of people obviously at home or working in contemporary workflows use their master fader, almost, going from the converter or their audio interface directly to powered speakers. Very common. And what we do now is just kind of come over here, and people use this as almost their monitoring volume. So we used to always get calls, people would have their speakers cranked up and they go to export and they have their master fader down here because otherwise it's too loud. And then their mix would be very low level amplitude. And that's because they're telling their mix to actually be, minus 18 dB softer. So the control room, the premise is, and we set up the control room in the audio connections, and we go to the control room, and we could just have a separate monitoring path. Now we could also have headphone cue mixes. We could bring in external sources without having to create audio tracks. And if we have different monitors, we could switch between different monitors. So when you look at our control room, like I could have a separate monitoring volume that's independent. So right now I had the control room down. And as I come over here, I could increase my monitoring level just using the control room. So it doesn't affect the gain structure of the mix at all. It's just, now if I want to set like a known reference level, I could come over here and just switch to, this is my known reference level. Someone calls, you could dim. We could set the dim amounts. Now, if I have different speakers, I could just come over here and say, okay, I want to listen to my large speakers in stereo, like in surround, small speakers in mono, like oratones, and we could just switch between these different speakers. We could set the volume for each of the speakers independently as well, so that when you switch, they're going to be consistent. Now, if we have stuff like different effects on our system as well, so we could come over, let's just say, okay, we're going to rewind here. So let's say we put like our track through reverb. All right, so now we come over here. So a lot of times people, when they want to solo different tracks, like that may automatically solo like the source track that's feeding it. But if I want to hear the reverb by itself, I could click on what's called the listen bus, and now we could just come over and isolate just the reverb for the guitar if needed. Now, if we are also doing stuff like room correction plugins, so if you have something like SonarWorks, something along those lines, as you simply, what you want to do is to correct the room deficiencies through processing, but you don't want that processing applied to your mix. So you could come over here to the inserts and have monitoring path plugins that aren't embedded in your mix. So, people don't need to hear the room correction on your main mix. So here you have a completely separate monitoring path for room correction reverbs that don't have any impact on your actual mix coming out of your project. So there's a couple of things that the control room can really give you good benefits from. All right, I'm going to paste the Zoom invite. Again, we'll be starting about a half hour. Okay. All right, Jonathan Eggle asked, what happens in the Zoom meetings once scheduled in an hour's time? So generally what we do is people that are on the live streams get together and meet, and they could actually talk, and other people could talk besides me. There's great discussions. So I always love the Zoom social meetups, and it's a great way to put a face to the names that you see here, and people sharing new equipment they got or insights on working with different equipment. So lots of great stuff. So Michael Pierce says, chat, questions, and a bit of geekery. That's a good summary. All right. You see Real Raven's suggestion for ghost pads or something. So. All right, Neural Tech Music asks, what is the oldest version of Cubase you ever used? So for me, it was, and Uno Momento beats me on this, but I started on Cubase 2 on Atari ST, Megaforce ST in 1991. So, but Uno Momento has me beat. All right, Samick Sachs asks, I had a tempo ramp in a project and I had to re-record a few audio tracks after setting definition from tempo and all musical time-based. Recorded audio didn't ramp up with the tempo changes. Okay. I had to re-record a few audio after setting definition from tempo and all musical time-based. Okay, so make sure that the tracks themselves are in musical mode. So let's come over here. We'll just load something up that isn't. Okay, so I'm going to just import an audio file here. All right, so let's say we're not going to have a. So we put our click on. There's no correlation here. So I'm going to just come over and let's get to your project menu, tempo track. And let's get to our tempo detection. All right, so now we're here. I'm going to just put in, I think we have a pickup note. All right, so we have our downbeat here. So let's make that our 4/4. All right, so what you have to do is make sure that this track that you want to, so I'm going to now come over and we're going to embed that tempo information in the track. So we come over and we go to our audio to advanced and we'll say set definition from tempo and we'll hit OK. So this has now been placed in musical mode. So it's not necessarily, the critical thing isn't necessarily the track, but that the actual event here is in musical mode. So we could have this, and if I change the tempo, it's not responding. But once the event, so make sure that the event that you're trying to alter, that is selected and that's in musical mode. And now, so then that will respond to the tempo. So make sure that the event itself, when you select it, is in musical mode. If that one thing isn't checked, then the audio track isn't going to respond to the tempo changes. So let me know if that helps. All right. See Alfred G. Pogo just says thanks, Greg. Wonderful to see Jay from Secret Studios. All right, we see Tim K joining from Zeist in the Netherlands. His cat Buddy is saying hello and is enjoying his crunchies, and he'll wave on his behalf. I think my cat is napping behind me, so he likes my couch in my office now. All right, so we see Exubsan just says hi all, and we see from Anders McCormick says nice one, Greg. All right, so Michael Pierce he's lurking at the moment with the stream in the background while he's working. All right, Anthony Clark just says, "Hi, Greg. How to get a vocal recording to tune it with a piano instrument VST, and how to know how many cent to adjust the VST from 440 hertz to tune it exactly in Cubase. What is the best tool for it?" So if you have kind of a piano, let me just open up like a piano vocal project. All right, so I'm not sure if, so if we have the piano instrument here, so let's say, so generally most pianos will come tuned at 440. And you can, depending on the instrument itself, so let's say if we come over here to, let's say the grand, we can open it up. So, depending on the instrument itself, you can, so I'm not sure if you're trying to tune, so if your piece, so let's say if we go here to the options, we could have our tuning here set to 440 hertz for the master tuning. So if you are in the, I need to be at 432 scale, I need to be at 432 hertz. You could do that if needed. Or if you're like Stevie Wonder, is a 442 is A to him. So you could just come over here. So you could adjust kind of the tuning scale, the tuning, the master tuning of the instrument if for some reason it isn't tuned. And then, so let's say if, you are working, usually I get this type of question, we're working at 432, and people are doing very audio edits. So we come over. So let's say we just want to go to very audio here. And if the piano is tuned to like 440, 432, and then we go to make all these notes in tune, very audio is going to be based on 440 hertz. But what you can do is also just select the particular audio event. And if you needed to, you could do fine tuning. So you can say, okay, I need to compensate this down -8. And now this audio, when we tune it to 442, will play back at, when we tune it at 440, now that we select a file, go to the fine tune, it will now play back at 432. So let me know if that's helpful. But, so depending on your instrument, so, if everything is kind of tuned, to 440, then, as we do our very audio tuning, we could just do that entirely and have it kind of snap to the tuning scale of 440 hertz there. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding at all, Anthony. All right, we see Brian Sawyer checking in from Yuma, Arizona. Hopefully we'll get to see you on the live and the Zoom social. All right, you see Jazzy posted a link for measuring meters. All right, we see Bratman Studios and taking his brother to a doctor's appointment, is watching the live stream in the waiting room. It's very kind of you and a great thing for you to be able to do. See Mark Winslow says that's perfect. Thank you very much. Probably with the clip gain. All right. All right, Heat Stoker asks, hi Greg, when I create a new group channel, it will autofill the send slots, which is getting in the way and is tedious removing them. Do you know why it happens and how to stop it? So there is a preference for this. So if you go to your preferences or settings and go to VST, there's going to be a connect sends automatically for each newly created channel. So as you add a channel, now the existing sends won't be added to your new group channel. So come over to, again, your preferences or settings, go down to the VST and say connect sends automatically for each newly created channel and uncheck that, and that should fix it for you. All right, so you see Russ just says control room is something I've never looked into despite using Cubase for many years. We'll deep dive based on your explanation. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, so once you do it, it's really a very powerful thing. And all right, wonderful to see Tiago joining from Brazil. Hope you're well. All right. All right, so we see from Usaint from Chicago. Just wondering if you could break down the main differences between Cubase and Wavelab. Is Cubase not for mastering music? So, it really could depend on what your definition of mastering is. So if your definition is, taking a mixed down file and processing it, then Cubase will do that fine. Wavelab is a dedicated mastering and wave editor. So it's not going to be doing MIDI, it's not going to do notation, it's not doing sequencing, it's not doing virtual instruments. It's really for kind of, delivering audio, being able to say, okay, I have my mix, I've sequenced my album, now I need to deliver it in 19 formats for different streaming services. I need to optimize loudness for these particular standards. I need to do, lots of mastering specific things, listen to everything. I need to make sure that the volumes from this track are equal to the volumes of other tracks, stuff like that. And it's not going to be doing MIDI sequencing. It's not really following a paradigm where we have a virtual mixer that's kind of following the concept or paradigm of a large format mixer where we have sends and inserts and channel strips that are, kind of what we would expect in a large format console. It's going to be more object oriented editing. So you may not see like bars and beats and, locking audio to speed up in time code or to speed it up to the project tempo and warp it in real time. That's kind of a separate workflow than kind of the Wavelab mastering area. All right, so we have Woo Productions just saying hey to everyone. We see David M joining. Great to see you on from Liverpool area. All right, we see Heat Stoker says, man, it's great. Thanks for that. I knew you would know the answer. Yeah. All right, we had a couple questions that were mailed in. Let me get to those. All right, so we had a question, how to punch in and out with punch points. Okay. I think I have... Let me see if I... Just look at my documents. I may have created this. I guess maybe I didn't save the project. Let me see if it's still in my... Okay, so there's kind of two different ways of working with, with punch-ins and punch-outs. So traditionally, for a long time, Cubase used the left and right locators for the punch-out positions. And so they were intrinsically tied to left and right locators. So as we would kind of work, we could just come over here and punch in and punch out. So now to activate punch in and punch out, you just hit the I for punch in and O for punch out. But sometimes we realize that people may want to punch in and not have it tied to the left and right locators. So maybe we want to set a loop for the left and right locators to play. Let me clear my throat. So we want to set a loop for the left and right locators, but we want the punch in to be independent of that. And that's when we go to your transport to punch points. So we can set what we call a punch point. So now I could loop this section, and we see these little red triangles here. And these red triangles, and we can set these a couple of different ways. So if I set my left and right locators here, or set my range rather, and I go to my transport, one of the things I can do is say set punch points from selection range. And I could say, okay, I want to loop one measure before, one measure after, and punch in and out. So as we do this, I'm going to play. It's now punching in, punches out, and now we'll do the cycle. Punch in, so we could have like a little bit of space afterward. If we're singing Catch a Breath, get into the vibe of it. Punch in, punch out, and again. So this way the punch in and punch out positions are decoupled from the left and right locator if you need to. All right, so we have next question. Says, I have a question for today's Club Cubase, if possible. Says, I've created a global template and have lots of older projects I'd like to past or imported tracks like instrument tracks and MIDI data, in particular instruments, audio tracks, automation, etc. Not just the audio or bounce tracks, but the actual unbound tracks that appear in my project, so I can paste them into my template at the right place with the instruments, etc. I hope this makes sense. How do I do this, please? Okay, so let's say we have a template. So I'm going to start a new project. We'll choose a template. I did one, let's say, for this particular song. So we're going to activate. So my template now, we have, let's say, our studio drum kit, the bass amp, and 2 guitar amps, and everything is set at 0 dB. All right, so I want to import. I think what the question is getting at is the ability to import all of the tracks into the particular session and retaining all of their automation and effects and everything. So to do that, we would, from this particular template, we would choose to import tracks from project. So you can see all my faders here at 0 dB. We're going to select the particular project. All right, so now I can see all of my tracks. We could select all, and there's also this select matching. So if I see, okay, I have a track here, one of the things I could do is say, okay, I want this track to import into this track. Now, if it actually has the same names, I could say select matching. So that if this is named kick and there's an audio track named kick, that data is going to be imported directly into that track. So now when I hit OK, if we look at our mix console here, we'll see that I'm going to import the events and the parts, and the channel and inspector settings and the automation. So I hit OK. Now all that data, it didn't get added to new separate distinct tracks. It's added into the tracks of the template with all of the effects, EQs, automation, everything that's been applied. So take your template, go to import, not a track archive, don't make a mistake that I just did. Go to import tracks from project, select the project, and select all and select matching, and then you should be, or you could manually put these to a new track or assign it to a different track. But I think the select matching thing is what you want to do. All right, next question. Is it possible to import only the bass from a montage style in the ESP as MIDI into Cubase, or to split the entire style into separate MIDI files? So I don't think that the ESP plugin actually allows you to get into that particular data. So that sometimes when companies do spend a lot of time coming up with styles and stuff like that, it's going to be intrinsically linked to the particular instrument that it plays, and the styles may not make sense playing back through other instruments. And it also probably takes a long time for have a sense of what the sound design team and programming team does at Yamaha, since Steinberg is part of the Yamaha family, that those were going to be kind of tied to the particular instrument to bring value to the instrument. So I don't think that they're going to allow you to kind of dissect all of the styles. All right, next question. Can one hope for a style agent in Groove Agent 6 similar to Genos or Montage? I mean, there is, different styles that, for every Groove Agent pattern, every Groove Agent kit. So let's say if I come over here to Groove Agent, and we go to load kits. I'm not sure if these are exactly the same. This probably could be a bit more capable than what I've experienced, but let's say if I just come over to a beat agent kit here, or let's go to maybe the studio kit, so you get a lot of different kits with it. But as we come over here, we can say, okay, I want to go to my studio kit, and let's go to Funky Rave. So now when I come over here I could have all of my, so I could have intros, endings, fills. Each of these variations here, I could control via MIDI. I could control the dynamics. I could also control the different levels of complexity. And if I wanted that to play in a halftime feel, I could do that for each of those patterns. We could say every 4 bars, play a random drum fill. And I want to adjust the auto complexity so that every bar, it can play back a different pattern. So we can say it could go 1 or 2 patterns in complexity up and be able to route this. So there's already, and we could trigger these different patterns from MIDI. So you could have all those different things going on in Groove Agent already. So usually when I've kind of played with the montage, it doesn't give me that many variations. So I think you could do a lot of that stuff inside of Groove Agent already. All right, next question. Is Steinberg heading towards an AI online DAW like the current Suno DAW? So I'm not sure. I wouldn't think that that's kind of our direction to do it. And I think if you think about the what's actually going on, if you have an online AI DAW, is one, if you write a song, you probably don't own the song. It's probably owned by the AI company. And as you're doing it, and while you're coming up with something that maybe sounds good, it's the AI company that's going to monetize it at all, and it's also the AI company that's going to own it. So, it might turn out to be that if you're using an AI DAW, that all you're doing is feeding data into the AI modeling for choices. And that if you don't own it, then the other company, someone else, could be making a lot of money off of your work. All right. Next question says, I started an album in Cubase 12 Pro and continued working on it in Cubase 13 Pro without problems. However, now that I'm working on Cubase 14 almost every day, I open and gives me a corrupt file message. In most cases, I've been able to fix by removing all the plugins, but on the last track, that method don't work. I ended up exporting all the tracks and importing them into a new project to resolve the issue. Do you know why Cubase 14 Pro is having so many issues with files created in earlier versions? So usually when this happens, it's going to be a third-party plugin. That's the culprit. What I would try to do is, just like we did momentarily ago, is, just come over here and do the import tracks from project, and see that when you actually select the particular tracks, try importing, the drums and see if that works. Try importing bass tracks to see if that works. See if, import multiple tracks, and I bet that you would still find like a reference to a plugin or something that's kind of causing the issue. So I would try to import as separate tracks and see if that resolves the issue. Most of the time that does. All right, so it's just about ready for Zoom. We'll see if there's just a last super quick question before we start up our Zoom social. And if you haven't joined the Zoom social, it's always great to be able to kind of meet different people that are on the live stream. All right. All right, so we see from Anthony Clark, if a vocal is recorded in untreated room, I get if the vocal off a couple of cents. I mean, is there a way to do it before tuning, meaning to tune the vocal to those by those cents and then tune the pitch? So usually the untreated room shouldn't really affect the pitch of the vocal. It may change the performance of the vocal, but if you wanted to, if you need to adjust it in cents, I would just come here to the fine tune controls here. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so just see one quick question from Hood Boy Terry will answer. It says, I want to know where master track is located after my recording, where my limiter and clipper should be if added. So generally, if you scroll all the way to the right-hand side of the mixer, you'll see like this, the stereo out, and that would be where you would do that. You could also see it, generally, if you come over here, you'll see input, output channels, and you'll see the stereo out. You could select it here and add inserts as needed. All right, so let's go ahead and get the Zoom. I'm going to paste the Zoom meetup here real quick. One more time. And I'm going to turn my light on so I don't look like I'm orange in my office. Bear with me a second. All right, so let's get our Zoom started. All right, so we have some people. All right, so we have Rick, Michael Marshall, Jonathan, Tim Weinheimer, Brian, Soren, see Wilfried, John Barry. All right, we'll let people migrate over. see Vince. We have Sable Winters. All right. Let people migrate over.
How are you all doing?
See Vince. We see Jay joining.
Somebody's got something going on in the background.
Sable Winters. All right. Let people migrate over.
Stop my Zoom call. I mean, I stopped my own YouTube.
So you see Thomas Van Dyke.
How are you all doing?
See Vince. We see Jay joining.
Somebody's got something going on in the background.
Sable Winters. All right. Let people migrate over.
Stop my Zoom call. I mean, I stopped my own YouTube.
So you see Thomas Van Dyke.
How are you all doing?
See Vince. We see Jay joining.
Hello, hello.
You seem to
Okay.
be stuck in some sort of list.
Stuck. Yeah, I know. I was stuck there for a second.
Let people migrate over.
Somebody's got the YouTube, I think. I mean, I stopped my own YouTube.
We see Thomas Van Dyke.
How are you all doing?
See Vince. We see Jay.
Row your boat.
Hello.
Seem to be stuck in some sort of list.
Stuck. Yeah, I know. I was stuck there for a second. That's
Let
weird.
people migrate over.
Okay, I stopped my. I closed out my YouTube to make sure it's not like double
Yeah.
window or something.
Yeah. All right, we'll let a couple more people kind of migrate over.
Hello. Can someone
Hey,
hear me?
Yep, Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was stuck there for a second.
Let people migrate over.
Yeah, I stopped my. I closed out my YouTube to make sure it's not like double window.
All right, we'll give it a couple more minutes on the live stream here. We'll migrate over in about a minute. We'll end the live stream.
I'm all ears. You can tell by the way my head's drooping forward.
Here,
I want to be with the palm trees and John Barry. Look at that. Wow. Tim, how's Orange County?
That's good. It's not LA County. That's what's good about it.
Yeah. I'm on the border.
Where are you at, Tim?
In Mission Viejo, California.
Oh, okay.
Where the
Oh.
most important guy in the city is the landscaper. He has the most power of the city. So we always get new trees, flowers, and everything.
Yeah, I was stationed at Tustin. Met and married my wife in Santa Ana.
Yeah, well, I used to live in Tustin too. I grew up in Irvine, so.
All right, I'm going to end the live stream here. Bear with me just for a second.
We used to call it Ken and Barbie Town.
All right, I'm going to post the link one more time in the chat, then I'll end.
Is everybody else getting a severely delayed echo?
Yeah, I've had lots of it.
I do hear a squeak, though.
Yeah, my speaker's almost at 75%. Sounds like everybody is kind of quiet. I don't know. Maybe it's me.
I was muted,
All
so
right.
I don't think it's me, but
Probably some update. Sometimes it's an update on your operating system. It causes weird stuff like